How will artificial intelligence revolutionize the way we manage cows, people, and profit on the dairy? It may be happening faster than you think. In this episode, we sit down with Aidan Connolly, president of AgriTech Capital, to explore what's next in the world of artificial intelligence and the importance of embracing technology before we get left behind. With AI evolving at a rapid pace, Aidan unpacks how the future of dairy is changing in real time, challenging everything we thought we knew about how this industry operates. That and more here today on the Uplevel Dairy Podcast. This episode is sponsored by Uplevel Dairy Podcast founding partner Adaceo, a global leader in nutritional solutions and premier provider of rumen-protected methionine for dairy producers who want to optimize milk production, capture more value from components, and maintain the health of their high-performing herds. Feed is the greatest expense on any dairy operation, and don't you want to know how an adjustment to the ration will affect your bottom line? Adaceo empowers nutritionists to make informed ration balancing decisions with MilkPay.com. Customizable to your dairy's own data, this profitability calculator puts the power of real-time milk market information in the palm of your hand. Find out how much your latest ration change is really costing you with the free MilkPay app available on iOS and through MilkPay.com. Aidan Connolly, welcome to the Uplevel Dairy Podcast.
Thank you, my honor.
So you just stepped off the stage here at Adaceo's VIP dairy meeting, and your conversation that you brought to light today was truly about the digital disruption of dairy and looking at how technology is changing the way that we feed and we farm. And so, Aidan, I want to dig into some of the key highlights that you brought up today and some thought-provoking thoughts that you drew forth. One of the first things that you brought forward today was really, first of all, addressing the challenges that dairy farmers face. And I think you can touch on this from both a domestic side, as in the U.S. production, but also looking at a bigger picture on a global scale, because some of those challenges are similar, but there are some differences. So break out for me, when we talk about, technology, we have to look at what problems can we solve. What are those problems and challenges that you've identified from the dairy industry that you shared with us today?
Thanks, Peggy, and it really genuinely is an honor. I've been following you recently, and you do some great interviews, so fantastic that I got the invitation to be here today. From my perspective, I actually think although the US has some peculiarities, a lot of the things we're facing are not that different than we're facing in other countries. Maybe it's just a question of extremes or how far. Specifically, labor on farms has become increasingly challenging. It's very clear when we think about it from a European context, but even in the United States, it's getting harder and harder to bring people to farms, to get the quality of people that we want, the quality of managers. And as we start to adopt technology, we're also looking for people's skills that they didn't have before. So they have to understand digital, they have to understand perhaps repairing a robot, they have to understand AI. US, particularly some of the areas where we produce milk, water can be a challenge. So the use of water on the farm, the use of water to irrigate crops, how to conserve and how to optimize is something that we think about a lot. As the farms get larger, I also think nutrition is a critical thing. We talk in fertilizer about, right place, right time, right form. I think exactly the same thing could be said about nutrition. Are we delivering the feed nutrients to that cow? Are we feeding her in the right form, at the right time, in the right place? Right place for me typically means inside, is it absorbed in the rumen or is it absorbed later on? And those things are things I think we're grappling with and trying to understand. The US is probably a little bit further ahead in that technology by the fact the size of the farms is growing. Your 10,000 cow dairies, your 12,000. That's clearly where we're going. And in that context, precision nutrition pays off to even greater degree than will on the smaller farms.
So as you lay that out, Aidan, what I'm hearing from you is as as we see the growth and scaling of the industry, whether that's here in the US or abroad, it's really looking at that word that you brought up, precision, when it comes to nutrition and also other aspects of management, but really getting down to the granular details. But I would add to that, what I heard from you too, is also the word optimization. So optimizing the labor force, optimizing the way that we utilize our human capital, but also with that comes data and technology. And so when you look at the data points that dairies are able to grab today from multiple sources, things that are either our monitoring technologies that cows wear, which a statistic that you brought up today in conversation too was an estimated that 5 million cows are currently using wearable technologies, and that was in the US. So we're now approaching over half of the US dairy cow population that has a wearable monitoring device. Like how incredible has that growth and scale been on that side? But it also leaves you wondering, where are the gaps?
Yeah, I think the wearable technologies are the ones which have received the greatest acceptance. And the justification for that, for me, has been driven very much by heat detection. I think the next generation of wearables will be actually the boluses, the sensors within the cow, because then we get to see how she is, what she's eating, how she's digesting. That's the one that I think will be the next generation. Your question about what we're not capturing is really interesting. For me, and I said it on stage, every drop of milk is a drop of data. Within every pound of milk is information that tells us what that cow ate, what her digestion's like, what her health status is, whether she has issues with somatic cells, antimicrobial resistant bacteria, approaching into the FLAM, like fertility, lameness, acidosis, mastitis, I call her FLAM. All of those parameters, those metabolic issues, you're getting information through the milk, and you're getting it 3 times a day.
Yeah, it's
so
incredible.
If you think about a crop, corn or beans, we basically know what we do when we seed, we know what we do when we harvest. We don't usually have a lot of information in the middle. And even with other species, chickens, pigs, fish in particular, because they're underwater, even eggs, you get 1 egg a day or less than 1 egg a day per hen. That's the only parameter you have about how that bird, how that animal is behaving, and what its status is. In dairy cows, we could be mining the milk. We could be getting a lot more information from that milk. And today, I don't think we do. We see that some of the milk companies are now also trying to look for more information, particularly with robotically milked cows, to take information from the milk in real time, your Lellys, your Delavals. But for me, that's an area that's just a massive gap that we should be trying to bridge that gap, because we have an opportunity in dairy that we don't have in other species.
And when you talk about that, you're really referring to milk analysis, inline milk analysis. Is that part of the
protein,
conversation?
Fat, somatic cells, milk urea, nitrogen. Measure the AMR, the antimicrobial resistance in any bacteria that we culture, and not least the yield. I mean, how much milk does a cow produce? For the most part, we estimate those numbers, or we do something maybe once a month, send the samples off, 3 days later get the answers back. There's an awful lot, for me, a feeling of looking in the rearview mirror at what happened a day ago, 5 days ago, 10 days ago, or even worse, 30 days ago. And we're then adapting the nutrition, then we're adapting the management, then we're looking at health. Is it too late? For me, it is too late. We should be thinking real time. The decisions we're taking should be changing on a minute by minute, hour by hour, worst case scenario, day by day, not simply thinking about what happened last week and how we make sure it doesn't happen again.
What I'm hearing from you, Aidan, is in part, a lot of the data is now available and collectible, but the gap may actually be in the time it takes to make a decision and make a change to adapt to a individual cow's needs. Is that what I'm kind of hearing from you? Is the gap is in the time between gathering it all, making sense of it, and pulling the trigger on the most actionable decision?
Yes, I like the way you're framing it there. And what I drill into is, I'd say, if the cow has acidosis, and she starts to cough up the cud and I see it on the ground, I know I have a problem. If she has mastitis, I know I've got a problem. If she's going lame, I know I have a problem. If I could get that information in real time, I would probably be able to get in there before that happens. And let's say that my protein's going down, so I use smart amine or protected amino acid, or that I know that I've got an issue with milk fats, so I change my diets. These are decisions I could take in the afternoon, not wait till a week later. If I've got an issue with lameness, maybe I should be using chelated minerals. If I have a problem with over acid production, maybe I could be using a buffer or yeast. All of those are decisions that I can make, and I could make them precisely still when I'm not at a therapeutic level, where I'm not at a treatment level, where I'm at a subclinical level, and I'm able to react immediately. And today, from a nutrition perspective, we're quite often making changes to diets only when we have these serious issues. We're inviting the veterinarian to come, or we're doing the medication ourselves when we know we've got a serious problem. This information in real time allows us to make decisions, probably without having to resort to the more serious interventions, and to do it quickly.
And you know, we've had the opportunity through our work on the podcast here to get out on some dairies that are utilizing technologies in different ways, everything from monitoring boluses that are inside of the cow, like you've alluded to wearable technologies, and it isn't. I think there are a lot of producers that are able to see how they've been able to speed up how things used to be to their rate of action and response and intervention in a different way today. But what I'm hearing from you is there's still more opportunity.
Huge. And people say, well, how much better can we get? Right. You know, we have farms producing 85 pounds of milk, 95 pounds of milk, 100 pounds of milk. Yet you saw when Mike spoke this morning, he's talking about a farm producing 240 pounds of milk in a cow, a single cow. Amazing, and wasn't even peak lactation. So I always describe the gap that we talked about a few minutes ago being the gap between the research farm and the average farm in the field. The best producers and the average producers, the best cows and the average cow. And those gaps are not small. If we're saying that one cow is producing 100 pounds and he's showing cows producing over 200, that clearly is 100 pounds of milk that we could be bridging. I also think that as we think about what we do next, very big believer also in this protection and microencapsulation. We've seen this in terms of amino acids. We're starting to see it now being used for things to help with the intestine. The more we're discovering about cows, the more we're realizing how little we know and what the gaps are in our knowledge, and how technologies will allow us to be more precise with less wastage, more targeted about where we send it to, and understanding the implications of what we feed, how we manage, and what we do.
And as you talk about those marks that we're able to look at and explore more, Aidan, one of the areas that you've been talking about are really health metrics that we are just really scratching the surface on for dairy cows. But you also brought up today when you took the stage, health metrics and really the healthcare system for humans, and some of your observations in that field that are foretelling for what we could see take more of a first place stance in agriculture, especially on our dairies. Can you just talk a little bit about that for a moment, of what some of those major observations are on the healthcare side in hospitals that you see a potential to maybe see at the farm level in the not so distant future?
Yeah, I suppose a lot of my healthcare observations were initially to take the fear out of the idea that technologies are going to replace humans on the farm. And I'm using the example of going to hospital, which I did recently in the US, and seeing robots carrying samples of blood from the patient in the ward directly to the laboratory at the right temperature, not getting distracted, not getting pulled into other things. The robot takes it from point A to point B, and it does it and delivers it perfectly. Picking up people, you see a lot of healthcare professionals who have hurt their back because they're picking up people who are heavy and they're not able to. A robot can do this. Sending somebody in to disinfect a ward potentially means that person could be bringing in an infection. So if you use a robot, you can eliminate that problem. We also now see that robots are better at orthopedic surgery than surgeons are, than human surgeons are. So as you start to think about these analogies, your thoughts are, there are a lot of jobs on the farm that maybe can be replaced. Clearly, we need the robots to be cheap. We need to be robust. We need sensors that can survive the challenges we have on farm. We need to be able to overcome sometimes connectivity issues, etc. We need to incorporate knowledge within the system. All of these things are absolutely going to be challenges. But healthcare gives us an example, which is that the one I explained on stage. I'm not seeing less doctors in the hospital. I'm not seeing less nurses. I'm not seeing less healthcare professionals, but I am seeing the jobs changing. And I think the jobs become better jobs. I think they become better at their jobs. Humans also have empathy. Humans can have empathy for each other, empathy for situations. Robots don't, AI doesn't. That clearly is the kind of skill that we have to figure out, where do we put that within the system to maximize the benefits of humans and remove maybe some of the tasks, some of the repetitive tasks that could be done better or as efficiently by a robot.
So you talk about tasks, but another side is training. And some of the things that you touched on as well, virtual reality, augmented reality. How do those things come into play? And will we see that in the future on dairies?
Yeah, very happy you were paying attention, clearly. I hope everybody else was as well. Yeah, so I think I start by trying to explain the human eye is limited in terms of what we see, what we imagine we see in the room here, the plants, etc., the colors. That's all where a mixture of what our eye detects and our brain interpreting that information. As soon as you use the equivalent of a Google goggles and you start to detect spectra of light, it's quite possible I'd be able to see pathogenic bacteria. I'd be able to say differences within soil, be able to see plant health. All of those things are things that I believe, using this augmented reality, we will be capable of bringing more to the farm and more to the farmer than what they see with their human abilities. I also have seen very clearly, particularly in the food industry, how virtual reality is being used as a training mechanism. So if I go all the way from augmented reality, so improving on what we have as humans, extended reality, which is a bit further, and then virtual reality, which is completely virtual, completely made up, but allows you to encounter or see how to fix equipment, how to deal with animals, train people what to do when they're managing or the welfare and or the health. All of those can be taught using virtual reality without the requirement for an actual real world situation for the person to be in or a real animal for them to be operating on. Those are opportunities. We're seeing a lot of virtual reality also being used to train consumers on where food comes from, which it wouldn't seem as though that's necessary, but with more and more people growing up in cities and less people growing up in the countryside, there has been that gap of understanding of what it is we do on farm, and we can show people the good stories that we have through virtual reality.
So as we trace this path of these different tools, we have to talk about AI. And you posed a question today, and it was this: is artificial intelligence really intelligent? Can you respond to your own question?
Yeah, it sounds like just a clever question, a funny question of Seth Godin, who I first heard using it, but other people have talked about this for the last 10, 20 years. And increasingly, AI is intelligent. AI is capable of doing what humans do. But in my experience with all types of AI, there's always the potential for what they call mistakes or hallucinations. So you always need a human looking through to make sure that what it's interpreting and what it's bringing to you is actually correct. And when you rely completely on the AI system, there will be errors and there will be mistakes. Now, over time, that converges towards, the gaps, the mistakes drop, and the reality meets the promise. But it does take time. And I think people outside of the AI industry imagine that it's either black or white. It's either doesn't work or it's perfect. The reality is there's an awful lot of things in the middle, which require humans to annotate, require humans to correct, require humans to confirm, that the interpretation is the right one. But it doesn't reduce or doesn't remove the fact that this technology is transformational and it's coming. And if you choose to be late to the game, I think you're making a massive mistake. It is going to change everything about how we farm. It's going to change everything about how we process food. And it's going to change everything about how we eat food. And anything less than understanding that, I think, is putting your head in the sand and ignoring the reality of what's coming.
On that note, let's forward project 10 years, which in the lifespan of technology is a pretty long time.
It's a long
at
time.
the rate of change. 10 years from now, you're walking on a dairy, say a 5,000 cow dairy. Where do you see AI playing a role in the management, in the oversight, in the decision making?
I don't want to shock people listening to your podcast so they don't come back. I mean, I'll go with the easy one. I won't be working on a 5,000 cow dairy for 10 years' time. I'm not sure I'll be working on a 10,000 cow dairy. If I'm working on a 10,000 cow dairy, I'm only working on a 10,000 cow dairy because it's part of a group that owns more cows than 10,000. I'm probably not having my nutritionist come to visit me. I think the sensors and the cameras and the robots will be collecting information. And a lot of the decision making on nutrition will be changed on a minute by minute basis or hour by hour basis. But I think minute by minute. And the nutritionist will be a data scientist, oversight, confirming, adjusting and making sure that, but not somebody who's coming to look at cows. All of that will be done remotely. Cows really do like being milked robotically, much more than they like being milked by people. So whatever that automated milking system looks like, robots or some sort of larger system, I think the cow's deciding when that happens, not us. I made the point today, somebody who's good at writing prompts, that's a skill of how to use ChatGPT, how to use Grok, how to use all of these different large language models. That's a skill. I don't think it's a particularly difficult skill to learn, but it's a critical skill to learn. And I imagine universities are going to have to teach people how to do it. At the moment, some universities that seem to imagine that you don't need to learn about ChatGPT. I don't think that's an option. Veterinarian science changes dramatically, has to change dramatically. And again, a lot more remote observation instead of going to the farm to look to see a problem. We'll know more about feeding. We're going to be very focused on what the cow actually ate and understanding how that reacts inside of the cow. Genetics, I feel, were a problem for us in our business. They were very variable, certainly compared to the chicken business, the pig business. We can see we're getting much tighter on genomics. I think we're getting much tighter on how nutrition affects genomics. We're understanding much more about the microbiome of the cow, of the plants, even of ourselves. So, sorry, I'm describing so many different things, but I rarely speculate more than 10 years out because so much is changing all of the time. But what's clear to me is I did create a video that I put on YouTube about what the farm of the future would look like. And I didn't really answer the question, but I said, is it a cow farm that goes up? Is it a cow farm that goes out in a circle? Because we all seem to have these standardized systems. Or is it like the Netherlands where the cow farm is floating over the sea? Or maybe even you've got fish underneath. There's lots of versions of what that looks like. But 100% clearly, it's not the farm that you're looking at today.
It's not the farm of today, and the roles are so different from what your projections are. And what I'm hearing and what you've been describing as well is a heavy reliance on the diagnostic side, really being able to pinpoint, problems that might be flagged through real-time data and having those predictive models to say, okay, this indicates, an issue with, perhaps mycotoxin or whatever it might be, right? So that piece seems like it could be quite a strong prong of what technology could do is really on that, figuring out what's wrong and then providing those next steps for taking action, but with perhaps less boots on the ground from the oversight, because that could be so much more remote.
Yeah.
But yet, what do you think we can't replace?
Well, today, a cow is a very unique animal. It takes fiber that we as humans cannot consume. We can't do very much with that fiber, and it makes it into milk. It's an extraordinary process. Of course, there are people out there that are trying to do it in other ways, through fermentation, through cell culture, whatever. I'm actually not a believer that that's coming. But once you start thinking 10 years, who knows?
Yeah.
It's certainly not there today. Certainly not there today. So will the cow exist? I believe so. Will the cow exist in 20, 30 years' time? That starts to get harder to speculate about. So many things will change relatively quickly. The human part of what humans can do that computers cannot do, that algorithms cannot do, that AI cannot do, is something that we're all grappling with at the moment, trying to understand, is this technology going to replace us all? Are we going to end up just staying at home and having our food produced and delivered to us? I certainly hope not, but you could speculate into that area as well. But let's go back to 10 years, which I think is a very meaningful and possible time frame to imagine. Yeah, I think jobs that require empathy, human understanding, I think innovation, creativity, for me, those are still jobs done by humans, albeit that we're starting to see quite creative work being done by AI. I think problem solving, I think, is still done by humans in the 10-year time frame.
Interesting. So I think something that you might find interesting would be actually a podcast episode that we recorded recently with a young woman. Her name is Michaela Bethard. Okay. And so she does the feed management at High Plains Ponderosa. We had a discussion about her thoughts on using artificial intelligence and some of those tools in dairy nutrition.
Yes.
And I was very interested to hear. So she's in her late 20s. So that's a person that has come into this realm of dairy feed management at a time when technology has just been moving so rapidly. But she said, I don't know that the day will come when some other tool can read a bunk better than I can, right? Like she was looking at, saying, I don't believe that this will place my nutritionist or the role of nutritionist in dairy. And not to say it couldn't be a tool, but I thought that was a really interesting statement from someone in an age demographic that I would have maybe otherwise expected to grab onto that concept. What do you think?
I mean, I probably would respectfully disagree. When somebody tells me I read a feed bunk better than an AI system can or than a camera can, I'm just wondering in my head what it is they're reading. I'm facing this situation with veterinarians who open up chickens. They do what they call necropsies, and they try to see why they're not growing, why they died, what disease they have. And there's huge differences between veterinarians in terms of what they see. And a lot of what they're seeing, I don't know if they're actually seeing. I don't understand how they're seeing it, but I'm wondering. So then I'm thinking, if they were able to see spectra of light, are they detecting things that maybe the average person doesn't, but that you could if you had other spectra of light? Are they detecting things that an AI system with enough information and data being taught by that veterinarian could start to understand as well? Could I have somebody that's reading the face of the bunk that maybe is detecting things about that bunk, about where heating is occurring, about why it's not been cut cleanly, that eventually with enough pictures, enough annotations, and enough data, you could teach an AI system to do? And my contention would be yes. It's just a question of having the right experts teaching with the right pictures, teaching the AI system the right things. You will be able to do that as well. So yeah, I do think sensors, I do think camera systems, and I do think automated decision-making mediated by AI is going to be a large part of how we're going to manage these farms. Back to your 10 years from now, 100% clearly for me, the farms that continue to survive and thrive, they're going to embrace this technology.
And when we talk about embracing technology and making decisions on how to invest in that, you threw up an acronym today, DRIVE.
Yes.
Can you explain that acronym and how that can be a helpful tool in some decision making for dairy farmers?
Yeah, it came from the interviews I had with 40 different experts on food and agri, interested in AI, and AI people interested in food and agri. So it's. I always like to say that you stand on the shoulders of giants when you're trying to do this stuff. I'm not smart enough to understand everything about what AI can be, but access to those 40 brains was amazing. But when we summarized what they said, they said the first thing you need to do is have good data. Quantity of data is not the problem. It's quality of data. The data needs to be cleaned up, needs to be carefully curated. It needs to be, you need to have good data. So collecting all the data that you possibly can from everything to do with your farm is not the only solution. It is clearly a good thing to do, but you also need to be making sure you're getting the right data. And AI will use that data then to help you make decisions. The second thing it is, you need to try to use AI, do pilots with AI. So, or D is data, or is run purposeful pilots, run pilots that have got a purpose and that are meaningful to you and your farm, that you can measure a response or return from them. The next thing then, don't rely upon outsiders. Don't rely upon consultants to come in and teach you. Create an inside team with expertise. And within that inside team, V, which stands for VIP, saying the farm owner, the farm manager need to be part of the process. Everybody on the farm needs to be part of AI. And E, which is basically do it now. Don't wait for somebody else. Get it started, and embrace the concept of using AI immediately. Don't wait for somebody else to be the pioneer to try to do it. So that acronym for me is just a nice summary of the 40 opinions, if you like, the 40 answers to the 6 questions I asked them. And then I got more simply into because people always say, well, what should I do now? And I said to the audience here today, download ChatGPT or some other version, pay for it for $20 a month, use a good one, in other words, and just from my perspective, learn how to use it by writing the prompts that say, if I have a cow that's showing these symptoms, what could it be and what should I be doing? How should I design my farm barn based on? Just start to learn how to use it for business planning, use it for applications for grants, using it for responses to helping it to respond to, media inquiries or consumer groups or people who are buying your milk. Try to find, even if you're not going to use those answers, try to learn how ChatGPT works. Because increasingly, the ability to use these language models, probably more important than the university you went to, probably more important than your IQ. This is a great democratizer of education for the people who want to learn how to use it. Particularly for younger people, that's a critical thing. It gives you access to an immense amount of information out there, both from your farm, if you allow it to, but also from the internet.
So I have to ask, what are the 3 AI apps that you use the most in your work?
I have focused on ChatGPT, so I pay for it. I don't do the $200 a month version. I do the $20. I'm actually intrigued by the $200 a month version. I'm just trying to get my head around what I would do to justify it. Somebody said to me, what is your interest for the next 10 years of your career? And I said, to become a thought leader in food and agri, influencing people to think about the world differently and to try new technologies. So he put that in ChatGPT. What does Aidan Connolly need to do to become better as a thought leader in agri? Answer back was this. Aidan's good at this. Aidan's good at this. Aidan's bad at this. Not bad, but room for improvement. Aidan should work with the United Nations on publish joint papers on artificial intelligence. Friend of mine is head of the FAO. You probably know her, Beth Betchdahl. She's in Rome at the moment. I went to see Beth. Beth said, "Why are you here?" I said, "Because ChatGPT told me to come." That's pretty good. She said the first time that ever happened to her in her life, but it's, kind of an interesting line as in, that's why I'm here. But that was honestly the answer. It said to me, if you want to, and I know, Beth for many years, she ran Innovation Indiana. She's a fabulous person. She's really inspirational. But there was an opportunity when I know the person who's number 2 in the Food and Agricultural Organization in Rome, part of the United Nations, to go and see and talk to people within her group. I've tried some of the others. I haven't found that they, Gemini or Grok, have been delivering me anything that I don't have. But I don't want to speak badly about any technology because, frankly, things change all the time. So this is not steady state. This is not like buying, piece of software in the old days and you download it onto your laptop and then that's what you have for the next 10 years, like a spreadsheet software, Microsoft Excel or something. This thing is changing all the time and getting better and getting more accurate and improving, and probably the learning from each other as well. So yeah, at the moment, that is what I'm using. What I'm learning to do is apply it in many, many different ways. It can do videos. I've used it for image creation. I used to pay people to create images for me. Yeah, with the right prompts, I'm getting great images from ChatGPT for the things I need: slides, articles, blogs, whatever it happens to be. Is really cool what it can do.
So it sounds like you found one particular app that can serve multiple purposes for using AI as a generative prompt and even a content creator.
Absolutely.
And so it's interesting to hear from you how it plays into your day-to-day and the work that you do, Aidan, as you make your rounds speaking and writing and sharing these messages and insights on technology and data and agriculture and food. And as we round out our conversation today, is there anything else that you would like to add? Any key take-home messages for our podcast audience, which is a lot of dairy producers, managers, folks that are working closely and sitting next to them at the table in their decision-making processes? Your final words for a dairy farmer.
I suppose, I published this book called The Future of Agriculture, and it's a free download, so it's not for making money. It's 160 pages of pictures and descriptions and discussion on robots and drones and AI, but it also talks about insect meal and cellular meats and vertical farming, and it talks about a lot of different topics. What it doesn't talk about is ChatGPT, because I published this book almost 3 years ago, and I published it 6 weeks before ChatGPT came out. And although it is online, and there is a new version coming out now with a new chapter on AI, the reality is the speed at which this is evolving, it's very hard to write a book and not be sure that book might not be out of date weeks after it appears. Yeah. It is not out of date. Most of the chapters are still, I wouldn't change very much in any of them, but that AI was a gap that I missed. So what's the lesson in that for me? I think the skill is continuous learning. As humbling as it was to realize I'd written this book, which took me nearly 5 years to write, and 6 weeks later, a major technology wasn't in my book. And I haven't put it on LinkedIn, etc. But still, there's a humbling moment of continuous learning is the key. Continuous learning is the key for anybody listening to this podcast or watching it. Anybody who wants to understand, you need to continuously learn. That's the skill. Plus learning how to write at the moment, prompts to use this, to use ChatGPT or the others. Those are the things that you should focus on. In my view, not even the next year, in the next week after you listen to this.
Well, Aidan Connolly, as much an expert as a continuing student in technology and the future of agriculture. And for those that are interested in taking a peek at this book or the download, we can include the links in our show notes. Is there anywhere else they should take a gander to be able to follow more of the work that you're doing?
LinkedIn is where I publish a lot. I do, of course, write for Progressive Dairyman. I've written articles for Farm Journal Milk. I've just released a blog on my LinkedIn page on what I think are the best technologies at the moment on dairy or for dairy. But the book itself is, as you said, it's on agritechcapital.com and you can download it for free. So if you want to know my thoughts on where I came to some of the ideas I have. Start by reading that. Even if you don't read the whole book in one sitting, which I don't imagine anybody would, there is a chapter on dairy. That's a good place to start.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that resource to be able to take home and to move forward with. But most of all, thank you for taking your time to sit down with us today on the Uplevel Dairy Podcast, Aidan.
Thanks, Peggy.
You just heard from Aidan Connolly. He left us with a powerful reminder. Continuous learning is the skill that will shape the future of farming. Thanks for listening to the Uplevel Dairy Podcast. I'm your host, Peggy Coffeen. Don't forget to take a moment to follow, rate, and share these episodes. And as always, keep on growing, keep on learning, and up-leveling your dairy. This episode is sponsored by Uplevel Dairy Podcast founding partner Adaseo, a global leader in nutritional solutions and premier provider of rumen-protected methionine for dairy producers who want to optimize milk production, capture more value from components, and maintain the health of their high-performing herds. Feed is the greatest expense on any dairy operation, and don't you want to know how an adjustment to the ration will affect your bottom line? Adaseo empowers nutritionists to make informed ration balancing decisions with MilkPay.com. Customizable to your dairy's own data, this profitability calculator puts the power of real-time milk market information in the palm of your hand. Find out how much your latest ration change is really costing you with the free MilkPay app available on iOS and through MilkPay.com.